Uncomfortable. Are you uncomfortable yet? No, not yet. Well, maybe. Comfortable is a problem for the church. Few people like to be uncomfortable. It seems to me that comfort is one of our biggest goals in life. Have you ever thought about that? I want to make enough money to be comfortable. I want to have a spouse who makes me comfortable. I want my children and my grandchildren to behave so that I am comfortable. I want my kids to live comfortable lives. I want people to be nice to me so that I can be comfortable. We want comfortable houses, and we want comfortable jobs, and comfortable cars, and comfortable trucks. We want comfortable clothes and comfortable shoes. I mean, we like comfortable plans. We just want to be comfortable. We want the hashtag blessed life, which really just means comfortable life. Well, while we may never say it outright, we want our relationship with Jesus to make us comfortable too. But is that what the Bible teaches? Is that what Scripture teaches? In this series, we'll learn that the blessed life is not always the comfortable life. The truth is that we are called to the uncomfortable. I have some exciting news for you this morning. To become mature disciples of Jesus, we will have an uncomfortable life. It has been said that there are many followers of Jesus, but very few disciples. I believe that. Why? Because many followers of Jesus believe that following Jesus makes their life comfortable. Jesus said that we must take up our cross and follow him. That is not an invitation to a comfortable life. That is what we are supposed to do. We are supposed to deny ourselves, to take up our cross and to follow him. That's the what we are supposed to do. The question we are asking is this: why? Why should we take up our cross? Why should we deny ourselves and take up our cross and follow him? Why did the disciples that take up their cross? Why did the early church do it? Why have Christians for thousands of years denied themselves, take up their cross, and follow Jesus? And why should you and I deny ourselves, take up the cross, and follow Jesus? We need to ask. Well, Jesus is calling somebody right now to take up their cross. I don't know who that is, but he's calling. He's like, hey, he's talking to you. He's talking to you. We need to ask not only why we should deny ourselves, take up our cross, and follow him, but we need to ask what will happen if we don't. And here's what will happen. If you don't get the why figured out, then your whole walk with God will be messed up and frustrating. You won't live in victory. You won't live a surrendered life. You will expect comfort in this life. You won't begin to truly understand the power of the gospel. You won't understand worship. You won't understand how to love your neighbor and your enemy. You won't understand your responsibility to the church, your responsibility to the Great Commission, your responsibility to discipleship. You see, every facet of your life is impacted by your willingness. It's not a big word, but boy, it's a big word. By your willingness to deny yourself, to take up your cross and to follow Jesus. In other words, to live an uncomfortable life. Let's read Mark chapter 8, verses 34 through 38. Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, now hold on, I want you to get the picture. Did you read that? Are you hearing that? Are you getting the picture as we read that? Jesus called the crowd to him. You get that? And the disciples. I want you to get that. And then he said this. Whoever wants. You see that word? Whoever wants to be. If you're, it doesn't look like very many of you have your Bibles out, but if you have your Bible out, I would encourage you to underline that. If you have it on your phone, I would encourage you to underline it. That word wants. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever, notice that, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. For what good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. In this passage, Jesus gives three uncomfortable choices to his potential disciples. The first uncomfortable choice is we must choose to deny. Jesus tells all of these would-be disciples that they have a choice to make. Jesus calls the crowd as well as the disciples together, and then he offers a choice to everyone present. And it is an uncomfortable choice. I want you to notice, it's not for a select few. It's not for special people. The choice is for everyone, and by the way, that includes you and me. Amen. He was talking to the crowd, and he was talking to the disciples. And he says, notice the word, whoever. I don't know if you know this morning, but you are a whoever. Whoever wants. That's the choice. Right there. That word is the choice word, isn't it? What is the choice? To deny themselves. Whoever wants to be his disciples, to deny themselves, to take up the cross and to follow him. You see, these are the conditions if a person is going to be his disciples. And that first condition is a choice. Whoever wants to be my disciple. It's open to whoever. That's anyone. That's everyone. But notice that next word. I asked you to underline it, and that word is wants. The word want has to do with desire. Whoever wants to be his disciple. You see, the key part of this invitation is this. Do you want to? Now, come on. Are you getting it? Most of you were parents. If you were a parent and your child needed to clean the room, how many of you gave them a choice? You said, clean the room. But if you were going to take them out to eat, you said, what do you want to eat? Jesus said, if you want to be my disciple, you don't have to be my disciple. You're not commanded to be my disciple. I'm not forcing you to be my disciple. But if you want to be my disciple, he's speaking to the crowd, he's speaking to the disciples, whoever wants to be his disciple. That's the choice. If you want to be his disciple, then you have a choice to make. What is a disciple? Well, the word disciple in the Greek is the word pathetes. It means learner, student, or pupil. And the way these learners, these disciples, these students would learn is they followed a rabbi around and they observed his way of life by learning what he taught, learning how he lived. They observed the rabbi in every facet of his life. And that is, by the way, the same way that you and I should live our lives. Opening our lives up, inviting people into our lives. This is how we live. This is what it means. This is what we teach. This is what we believe. That's what the rabbi did. That's what a disciple did. Is he followed the rabbi, or she followed the rabbi. Notice Jesus is not forcing anyone to be his disciple. He does not compel. He does not argue. He is not forcefully trying to convince someone. He simply says, if you want to. In other words, if you have a desire to be my pupil, to be my student, if you have a desire to learn from me, here's what you need to do. You need to deny yourself. I think we've got that covered. So what does it mean to deny yourself? What does it mean to deny yourself? It means that we set His desires or His will for our lives over our desire for our life. Let me say that again. We set His will over our will for our life. We set His desire over our desire for our life. His desire for our life has prominence and preeminence over ours. It means that we take our desires, our plans for our lives, and we place them under His control. It means that we no longer live to please us and to bring glory and honor to us. It means that His will is accomplished in our lives. It means that we will say what He said in the Garden of Gethsemane right before His crucifixion. Do you remember what He said in the garden when He was praying? He was talking to God the Father. Do you remember He was praying and He was sweating these great drops of blood, the Bible says? Do you remember what He said? He said, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Here's what He's saying. I don't want to do this. This is hard. I don't want to do this. But then what did He say? He said, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. Your will be done. You know, that's an example of a great leader, by the way. A great leader will never ask you to do something he or she is not willing to do themselves. Did you know that? And when Jesus says this, He says, listen, if you want to be a disciple of mine, if you want to, you can, but you have to deny yourself. And when it comes to denying yourself, I know what I'm talking about because I do it too. Father, not my will, but thy will. That's our prayer. Should be our prayer for our life. God, it's not what I want to do in this situation. What I want to do may not be the right thing to do. God, what do you want me to do here? Not my will, but your will. Not my will, but your will. Jesus was denying Himself. And He will not ask you to do anything that He has not done Himself. Denying yourself, denying ourselves is a process. We need to do it daily. The truth is that it may be difficult in the beginning, but the further we walk with Jesus, the easier it gets because we trust Him more. We learn to humbly submit our will to God's will. So you may be sitting there thinking this morning, well, what does denying yourself look like day to day? What does it look like in my day-to-day life? How do I live my life in a day-to-day way that is denying myself? If you're asking that question, you're fortunate because I have some answers for you. It means that we don't get revenge. It means we don't have the right to live in large and impressive homes. Jesus said, I have no place to lay my head. We don't have the right to expect acceptance from others. We can't spend our money however we please. We don't hate or hurt our enemy. We serve rather than being served. We give up the right to understand God's plan before we obey Him. Wow, that was a good one. Let me say that again. We give up the right to understand God's plan before we obey Him. If you've done even a slight perusal of the Bible, and you know that He doesn't say to anyone, let me explain the whole thing to you. Let me just tell you how everything's going to work out. I'll explain the whole plan. I'll get you the blueprints. He doesn't do that for anyone. It's simply follow. Obey. What does it mean to deny yourself? It means we don't live by our own rules. It means that we don't hold grudges. Rather, instead, we forgive. We deny ourselves the right to complain. Hello? We don't put ourselves first. And in very real and practical ways, our gender and our sexuality is created by God, not by us. We give up the right to rebel against authority. Denying yourself is when someone hurts you and you respond with love and kindness, like Jesus. Denying yourself is when you want to fight back, but you don't. Denying yourself is when you have your life all planned out, and God says, I have other plans for you. And you say, okay, God, not my will, but thy will. Denying your God with your time and your energy and your finances. It's realizing that money is not your number one priority in life. Denying yourself is surrendering to His will. Denying yourself is surrendering control of your life to Him. Did you like that? Denying yourself is surrendering control of your life to Him. Let me put some skin on it if I haven't already. Have you ever given up a higher paying job to take a lower paying job because it was God's will? Have you been ridiculed and talked about because you were doing God's will? Have you given away your home or your car because God led you to do it? And if that doesn't help, let me ask it this way. Can you name 3 things? Can you name 3 things that God has asked you to give up and you gave it up? Can you name 3 things that God asked you to give up and you gave them up because He asked you to? If you want to know how good you are at denying yourself, here comes the pinch. Take a look at your checkbook and your credit card statements. How much have you denied yourself and how much have you indulged yourself? Jesus gives us an uncomfortable choice, and that choice is to deny ourselves. The second uncomfortable choice is that we must choose the cross. That's number 2. We must choose the cross. Jesus tells the crowd and His disciples that they must deny themselves and they must take up the cross and follow Him. He is telling us what it will take to be His disciples. Let me tell you, the truth is, if you are not a disciple of Jesus, you are a disciple of someone else. If you are not a disciple of Jesus, you are a disciple of someone else. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a famous person in the media or social media. You're a disciple of someone. And if we're going to be a disciple of Jesus, we must choose to take up the cross. And this choosing is a consistent choosing to follow Jesus. Every day we decide to pick up the cross. Every day we decide that it's worth it. See, we cannot pick it up one day and leave it alone the next day. We can't take the cross and just carry it part of the day. We have to carry it every day. We can't be half in and half out. Another way of saying it is we cannot be lukewarm. We must make the tough decisions on the tough days. What are the tough days? It's those days when it would be easier to give up. By the way, Jesus lets us know that there will be tough days ahead. So what did Jesus not mean when He said to take up your cross? That phrase, to take up the cross, to bear the cross, to carry the cross, is misconstrued and misunderstood so many times. It's misapplied and misinterpreted. Sometimes people interpret to carry the cross as some burden that they must carry, like a strained relationship or a thankless job or a physical illness. And they say things like, well, that's just my cross to bear. That's just my cross to carry. That's just the cross I have to carry. That's not what that means at all. That's a complete misunderstanding and misinterpretation of what Jesus is saying. That's not what Jesus said. When Jesus said to take up your cross, The disciples and the crowd present knew what that meant. How would they know? Because they had seen people crucified on crosses for crimes against Rome. They had seen people crucified for being a criminal. Remember, Jesus was crucified between two thieves. It was a common practice to see people crucified. The crucifixion was a death by 1,000 lashes, if you will, if you've heard that phrase. It is painful, and it is a slow death, and yet it was a common thing for people to see. They would take the people and they would put them on crosses along the edges of the road because they wanted people to see the pain and the agony of the cross to dissuade people from being a criminal or from rising up against Rome. When Jesus said to take up the cross, he wasn't saying, why don't you go buy a nice piece of jewelry? Nice little gold or silver cross and put it around your neck. And everybody know you're carrying the cross of Jesus. Why don't you go get some nice crosses and put them as decor in your house, and they'll look so pretty. You see, that's not what the cross means at all. That's right. To carry the cross means to embrace pain and suffering and rejection. When Jesus is saying, listen, if you want to be my disciple, you need to be ready for pain. If you're going to be my disciple, you need to be ready for people to hurt your feelings. If you want to be my disciple and you're going to carry the cross, people are going to say untrue things about you. For my sake in the gospel, is what he says. You see, that's what carrying the cross. The cross is a sign, it's a symbol of death and torture and pain and suffering. That's the sign of the cross. We've lost sight of that. The cross today is decor. The cross today is jewelry. So let me try to shock your sensibilities a little bit. Let me see if I can give you a better example today of what Jesus might say. If you remember back in the 17 and 1800s, when someone would be caught breaking the law, many times they were hung until they were dead. If you watched Gunsmoke or some of those old westerns, you've seen it. So today, Jesus might say something like, if you want to be my disciple, you must take up your noose and follow me. Well, Jesus, that doesn't sound any fun at all. That doesn't sound like something I want to do at all. If we were to move it up into the 20th and 21st century, criminals nowadays are often killed by an electric chair. Not so much now, but a few years ago, electric chair. People would be shocked to death. So Jesus might say, if you want to be my disciple, you must deny yourself and take up your electric chair and follow me. Well, I don't know if I want to follow you, Jesus. See, that's a little bit different than, oh, what a pretty cross you have hanging around your neck. Oh, such pretty earrings that you have. Oh, that's awesome. Perhaps Jesus might say, because this is the most common way today that people are killed who are on death row, that's lethal injection. If you want to be my disciple, take up your syringe filled with lethal drugs and follow me. You see, when you think about what Jesus is saying, that's really a more accurate picture that he is painting. It was a contemporary of his time. This is the way people died, is by the cross. And Jesus is saying, listen, if you want to follow me, you must be willing to go all the way, even to death, to pain, to suffering, to take up the cross as a choice. And it's a choice many people are unwilling to take. There are many people who want to live a comfortable life, but to be a disciple of Jesus means to be uncomfortable, to be prepared to suffer, to be prepared to die. What's the advantage of living that kind of life? I believe it's powerful because for you as an individual and for the church, what happens is we begin to get our life in focus, into sharp focus. We begin to realize that there are things worth living for and there are things worth dying for. And I don't know about you, but I have discovered that the things that are worth dying for are the same things that are worth living for. Have you discovered that? You may be thinking, Pastor, how do you know that suffering and death are what Jesus is referring to? Because in verse 31, which we did not read, Jesus told the disciples that he would suffer and that he would be killed. Here's what he said in Mark chapter 8, verse 31, just 3 verses before our reading this morning. This is what he said. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said, I'm going to suffer and I'm going to die, and if you follow me, you need to be ready to do the same thing. You need to be ready. You see, that's uncomfortable. I want to let you know this morning that Jesus is not doing a soft sell. He is up front with the cost of discipleship. He's not coercing anyone. He doesn't say, everything is going to be great. He doesn't say, if you follow me, you're going to be admired by everyone, and everyone's going to think that you're just awesome and peachy keen. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, oh, if you want to be my disciple, you can give just a little bit. No, what he says is, if you're going to follow me, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross. You must be willing to take up the pain and suffering associated with the cross. It's not comfortable at all, is it? It will cost you your friends and your family. It will cost you relationships. But only if you want to be his disciple. Do you want to be his disciple this morning? Are you ready to take up your cross? Are you ready for an uncomfortable choice to follow him? The third uncomfortable choice is we must choose to lose. In verses 35 through 38, Jesus asked us to consider the value of our lives so that we can choose how we will spend our lives. Did you catch that? Did you know that right now that you are either spending or investing your life? Spending or investing. Spending your life, listen, this is so good, and I don't feel like I can adequately communicate it the way I'd like to today. But listen, the things you do with your life, every moment that you spend in your life, you don't get that back. It's gone. Spending your life is not like spending money. If I spend all money in my wallet today, I can go out and work and make more money and fill my wallet back up with money. Not that it's full. All right, let's just be clear. But I can replace the money that's in there. You understand what I'm saying? But every minute of your life that you have done something, you have spent it or you have invested it. It is gone. You don't get to go out and get more hours. You don't get to go out and get more days. You don't get to go out and get more weeks. And Jesus is talking about that. When you choose to lose. Some of the things that we do are simply wasting or spending our lives. In verses 35 through 38, Jesus is saying there is a way of living that results in losing your life and losing your soul. And yet in verse 36, he asks the question, what if you could gain the whole world and lose your soul? Well, let me ask you, what does it mean to gain the whole world? Perhaps it means to gain all the money and the fame and the pleasure and the power and the prestige. What if you could gain everything that the world has to offer? Everything. If you could gain everything, and yet it cost you. It cost you the laughter in your life. It cost you the love in your life. It cost you the people in your life. It cost you your integrity. It cost you your character. It cost you your hopes and your dreams. And perhaps most importantly, I believe, it cost you your eternal soul. Would it be worth it? That's the question that Jesus asks. That's an uncomfortable question. So many people start chasing the world and all it has to offer, and they never realize it. And that's how we get messed up. That's how we get led into sin. And that's where a life of sin will lead you, into chasing the world. It'll lead you to bigger and bigger sinful appetites. And those sinful appetites will cause you to hurt yourself and to hurt others. It creates a chasm between you and God. You see, part of the reason that God hates sin is because of what we do to one another. Let me say it again. One of the reasons that God hates sin is because of what we do to one another when we sin. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but when we sin, it's never just against us. It's always against someone else. If you've ever lied to someone, someone's involved. If you've ever cheated on someone, someone else is involved. If you've ever you stole from someone else is involved. Do you understand what I'm saying? When we sin, we hurt other people. And it's one of the reasons that God hates sin. It offends him. And it hurts others. So many people are not happy with what they have. And so they want more and more and bigger and better. And let me tell you, unfortunately, this same thought process finds its way into the church. People want bigger and bigger houses after their kids move out. Think about the rationale. We have fewer people in the house, and now we want to build a bigger one. We want bigger and bigger and bigger. We want more and more and more and more and more. And it doesn't satisfy, and it doesn't fulfill. And you have to work, and you have to make choices about the things that you have done. You're gaining the world, but you're losing yourself. Some people collect junk, like that little piece of the world will bring happiness and fulfillment. People chase inappropriate relationships. You see, chasing the world will lead you to crazy and unfulfilled places. And we see examples all around us of people chasing the world's values. We see it even as we saw this morning on a quick 3-minute video. We see it in the battle for abortion. That is the world's value system on full display. I want to do what I want to do and not live with the consequences of my choices. We see it in another area today. We see it in the LGBT community. I know people who are who are taking medications to change their appearance. Let me tell you, I know a guy who wants to be a girl. I know a girl who wants to be a guy, and they're taking medication. What is that? It is chasing the world and what it has to offer. chasing the world. And before we get high and mighty and say something about people who have abortions and people who are in the LGBTQ, let me tell you, chasing material things is just as crazy. Chasing things that cause addictions are just as crazy. Chasing power and prestige, just as crazy as changing your gender. Let me be clear today that we are a place where people get tired of chasing the world. And they come to a place where they realize that the hope is in Christ. And we realize that this is the place, and we are the people who offer hope. That it doesn't matter what anybody has been through, we're the people who offer hope. We're the place who offers hope. It doesn't matter what's happened in the past. Jesus is a redeemer and a forgiver. Amen. And he wants us to choose the best way, which is uncomfortable by the world's standards. Choosing to lose means choosing Jesus in the gospel. We must understand the value of our lives, of our souls. We must choose to follow Christ and the gospel. So let me ask you, as I bring this to a close this morning, let me ask you, what do you need to lose this morning? Where has the world crept into your life? And right now, the Holy Spirit is speaking to you and saying, you need to lose this. You need to let go of this. What is it that you need to choose to lose? Choosing to be a disciple of Jesus means turning away from selfishness. Turning away from selfishness means living an uncomfortable life. Living an uncomfortable life. The uncomfortable life that Jesus asks us to live is the life that brings joy, satisfaction, peace, and contentment, and so much more. So many people in the world, and as I talk about many people, I'm sure if I were to ask you to think of just a few people, you would be able to name people who are not denying themselves. They're not taking up their cross, and they are to lose anything that the world is offering them. But we offer them hope today. And I offer you a challenge this morning. A challenge to choose to deny. A challenge to choose the cross. And a challenge to choose to live.